Hi everybody, welcome to a new edition of Let's Talk About Education with Antonio Corrales. We have heard about the impact of art education in schools. We have heard about the relationship between art education and academic achievement throughout different core subjects. But what does it mean to run an art program at a high school level? Well, today we have the honor to have with us Joan Finn,
Hi.
who is a seasoned educator and somebody who has run art program in a high school for years. John, thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, it's my complete pleasure, my friend.
Absolutely. Well, I want to start by letting you introduce yourself to the audience and kind of letting them know how do you get to where you are in your career right now.
My name is Joan Finn, and I have been teaching at the same high school for 24 years. I am a working artist. I had my own company since I was 15 years old, working as a graphic designer. I was living in Europe, and the last year I was there, I had done some mural work with the local school. And the day before their school year started, the principal called and said, please, 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 we're desperate. I need a teacher. Will you consider doing it? And I thought, what the heck? I did it. I had the most marvelous time. It was fantastic. So I came back to the United States and I finished my degree and included a teaching certificate. So I just happened to walk into a job fair, sat down with a woman, and she hired me on the spot, and I have been there ever since. I started in a small English room at one end of the high school, and now I'm in a huge space. It's a beautiful studio, and here I am, and I love it. I've never worked a day in my life, and that includes my teaching career.
That is fantastic.
Yeah.
So, what can you tell us about the impact that in your opinion, art education has on children's life? Because we heard a lot about research, but sometimes when I'm in the schools all the time, due to the perception is that art education is more like an enrichment program than a particular need. And when you look at research, that's not really true. I mean, most research shows that art education is necessary for students, especially economically disadvantaged students, to succeed academically in other core subjects like reading, math, etc. So what can you tell us in your experience about the role that art education has on children's life?
All right, that's a huge answer. So let me try and break it down from the most basic to the more complex. Basically, children learn in 7 different ways, and they retain a certain percentage of information in different formats. But 99% of the time, kids retain information if they create something, if they actually make something, and you can't. That's brilliant. It's a wonderful tool to have at your disposal, whether you're a regular classroom teacher, a core classroom teacher, or a studio scenario. Sometimes in some communities, especially the community where I'm from, kids have a hard time getting to school or wanting to come to school. And if you have a program that kind of takes them out of the testing scenario or gives them the freedom to create or express themselves in ways that they usually don't have the ability to, it's a good thing. And my studio does exactly that. The kids are creative, they're collaborative, and it's a personal experience. Fortunately, in the state of Texas, the kids need 1 credit hour of a fine art. So we have that to the visual arts advantage, and music, band, choir, theater, dance, any fine art. Also, now in the state of Texas, students are required to have a 4th measure, and which they can receive in the arts and humanities. So they can do it in STEM, they can do it in sciences and math, and they can also do this in the fine arts. So we feel like we have advocacy, we have support of the state, and so on.
So basically the impact that art education may have on children's life and their future, right?
Right. So there was a consortium, there's still a consortium called Partnership for the 21st Century Skills. And it consists of CEOs from all the major companies all over the world. They got together and they talked about what they're looking for from kids coming out of high school for the workforce or college, at the college level. And they also talked about the skills that students are lacking today. And several of those are critical thinking skills, problem solving, working collaboratively. Students don't often have the opportunities to do those types of things in a regular setting. But in the art room, that's all we do all day long. So I think that art is extraordinarily important. Plus, you can teach anything through the arts, specifically history, of course. I could teach a whole history course using nothing but art and from the beginning of man to modern day. It gives kids a sense of ownership because they actually create something. They put their name on it. I make sure that we have shows so that kids, we invite the community, we invite parents. I call parents. I make sure that kids participate in contests so that they win. You know, a lot of these kids aren't winners in the traditional sense. Mm-hmm. But if I can get them to win an art competition, or they go to state, and that's brilliant. I mean, you can't beat that.
Mm-hmm. No, that's fantastic. Now you kind of start bringing this up, but in terms of the practical implication of running a program at a high school level, what are your thoughts about it? I mean, what are the pros and the cons that you can see? Because I think your experience could be extrapolated to any high school in America in general, public school. So, what does it take to build an art program, an art program in a high school?
That's a good question. Most art programs in the country, in the state, they don't have administrators who understand the arts. I've been fortunate in the past to have some really spectacular folks that are at the administrative level who taught in the theater for 25 years or however that worked out. You need to have a good feeder program. You need to fight for an arts program at the elementary level. You need to meet with those teachers and align your curriculum vertically and horizontally. You need to have a really strong program at the middle school and then get to know that teacher and get to know those kids, especially in those eighth grade advanced programs, so that you start a partnership and you start a conversation and they can't wait to get you when they get to the ninth grade. You need support from your staff. You need support from your principal because you are kind of an out-of-the-box type of gal, you know. I am the biggest junker you could ever imagine. I don't have any money, but I have so much stuff, you can't believe it. I make partnerships and I ask for anything that I can, anything that anyone's giving away, I'm on their list. And then you tie into the core disciplines. You want to talk about that for a little bit? Absolutely. Anytime that I can bring in math or science or social studies or history or technology, I do it. I've had some really good mentors, some really good friends who are brilliant in their field. And a friend of mine, Cheryl Evans, used to yell out, "We're doing math in here!" And she'd holler down the hall to anybody who listened. It's kind of a joke, but it really isn't. I fire my kiln, just for instance, I fire my kiln in Celsius and then have my students figure out the Fahrenheit, so that there's math involved. And ceramics is math based, it really is. And of course the historical part of I can teach history all day, we talked about that. We do a lot of writing, we do a lot of talking, we do a lot of science. As a matter of fact, right now, I'm in the middle of a grant. Well, I am writing a grant, but what I'm doing is everything in my class this year has an anatomy component. I've been working with UTMB, doing a lot of things with UTMB. I've taught a couple of college classes with college students, bringing art into the gross anatomy lab. I brought lots of teachers and working artists through my TAEA, the Texas Art Education Association conferences. I bring them into UTMB. We do a lot of work there. So I wanted to bring it to my high school students. So every project that we're doing has an anatomy component. And I've coupled with the anatomy and physiology teacher at my high school. And when we go to her class, her students are the educators. And when her kids come to my studio, then my kids are the educators. They collaborate on a project. They have to write, they have to present, and they are making some of the most creatively expressive works of art that show body systems, skeletal, muscular, respiratory, the whole thing. And they're becoming experts. And this is an effort for me to kind of teach preventative medicine, if you will, because the more you understand about your body, the healthier that you'll be. You can, it works. It's a win-win scenario.
That is fantastic. Now, what about dealing with students who are economically disadvantaged? I mean, what have been your experience in terms of getting them interested in art education, and how has that helped you reaching out to them and their parents?
Okay, that's a good question. A long time ago, I met this woman who was pretty smart, and she presented a list of things, traits about kids that are in Title I schools. And one of the things she said was they have no tools at home, so expect them to crumble up their paper and throw it away. Well, so I you know, it really. It resonated with me because I see that a lot. And at first I didn't get it. I thought, just stop it, you're wasting paper. But if you give them tools and you show them a way to like count, because a lot of my kids are so frustrated for many reasons that they count, they take a breath. I try and do a lot of things to start off with that you can't make mistakes. And in art, one of the greatest things is there are no mistakes, because you can turn every mistake into a masterpiece, you know? And so if you go that way, then they'll never fail. They'll never fail. And I make sure that the kids don't fail, because you can always turn anything into a work of art, right? And if they're dissatisfied with what they're doing, you can always show them other people's artwork who some people may not view as particularly successful, but it's different at Sotheby's or Christie's when that art auction, you know, brings in $84 million or whatever it is. And then there's lots of stuff that resonates directly with them, like Banksy or Ed Hardy, or they get art. They totally get art. They're doing art when they're on their machines. They're looking at the screen. That's all art.
Now, has that helped you, or do you think that has helped the schools as a parental involvement tool? You know, with the economically disadvantaged students.
Yes, when you invite parents to see their students' work, it is amazing. It's an amazing experience. We have several art shows a year, and I always invite the parents. We play music, we have food, and I try to have it in a nice environment so that the parents, you know, really feel like, wow, this is a big deal for their kids, because it is. It is a big deal for their kids. I always call the parents just to tell them how great their kids are doing. You know, of course I make those phone calls home like, oh, Johnny is just driving me crazy. But he's a lovable Johnny. But I always try and make sure that I call to say, hey, your student, your son or daughter has done a magnificent piece of work, and you really got to see it. And did they get it from you? That's always a good one.
That's always a good one.
That's a good one.
A good way too.
Did they get that from you? But it's an interesting thing too is when I was talking about building my future program, our middle school happens to be in our high school right now. So I've spent the last couple of years meeting and bringing the 8th graders down, especially those kids in advanced 8th grade art. So I went to, before school started this year, I went to ninth grade orientation. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking, through these crowds of kids for these particular students to say, hey, bring your parent over. I want to make sure that you join the program. But it was the parents going, oh, no way. I have 20 kids this year who I taught their parents. And now I have their kids. So
That's fantastic.
that doesn't hurt the program either or the phone call home, hey, that Johnny, oh yeah, they know Miss Finn, so.
What about the AP exam, the RAP exam? Because because one of the great things about the AP program and the college board is that the kids had the opportunity to get some college grades, and so what are your thoughts about the process? Because I've heard that it's really hard and because it's a long-term process. What is your experience on that, and what is your thinking process about the APR exam?
The AP history exam is the hardest exam that there is. And as a matter of fact, it's the only one that Harvard and Yale accept, I believe.
Wow.
I mean, it's really difficult. But the AP portfolio series are obtainable. You just have to be on top of your game. I think it's brilliant that kids have the opportunity to receive college kids. I've had students receive AP credit. You have to be careful about looking into what schools accept what credit, because you don't want a kid to be so disappointed after such a vast amount of work only to discover that the university or school that they want to go to does not accept that credit. But it's totally doable. In my classrooms, the kids start working on their AP portfolios the first year I have them. I drive some kids.
Talking about freshmen.
Yeah, I'm talking about freshmen.
Yeah.
I drive some kids nuts because of the way I structure my my program. The kids do large pieces that are meaningful, that are portfolio pieces, starting in Art 1.
Okay.
So instead of doing a bunch of little minutia, a lot of small things that don't really add up to a lot in my opinion, I show you how to do it, and then you make big masterpieces. So if they have me for 4 years or 5, if they double up, like twice, they're taking me twice a year, not that they're 5-year high school students, then they're AP ready. As a junior or a senior, they already have their portfolios.
That is fantastic.
Yeah, and it's you take photos, and the level of participation is really an interesting an educational thing, I think, because they have to write about it, they have to talk about it, other than just doing a piece of flat art and saying there, I'm done.
Here it is. What about motivating millennials? Because I mean I think art and reading and all the educators have a lot of competition nowadays with Netflix and technology. So what do you do to motivate millennials and basically get them to participate in your class and get into the art, with all that many competition that you have out there?
All right, I was going to play a joke. I'm looking for my phone because I was going to do this, because that's the hardest part.
That's the hardest part.
That's the hardest part. They're so connected. They're so very connected.
Yeah.
I went to a conference on Saturday, as a matter of fact, the TCCA, held in Aldine, and it was all about technology. And one of the most interesting things I participated in was having the kids design tweets and podcasts, and reaching them in that way, because this is where they live.
Yes.
Right? This is where they live.
Yeah,
and they're all about how many hits they do and how many... So in that way, that would be a fun fix. Otherwise, I am an old dog, right? I am an old dog.
I think we all.
Yeah.
In comparison to those guys.
Ow!
Yeah.
So it's really difficult to bring a lot of technology into a classic studio art program.
Yes.
It is. So with my thing, they can use their phones whenever they need to, right? looking for images, or looking for TED Talks, or looking for podcasts, or interesting things that they can bring relevance into the curriculum, realistically, really, and not just texting your boyfriend. And you know, for me, I always joke with them. Are you painting them a masterpiece on that text? I mean, what are you doing over there?
Exactly.
Does it have context? Are you talking about Picasso? If you can prove that, you're not in trouble. So it is. How can you get them excited, and how can it become relevant to them? So in that way, I take them as many places as I can. As much money as I can get for buses, and I bring people to us because that's free, and I have lots of artist friends who are happy to come and talk to the kids and talk about their careers and what's available to them and how it's changed their life. And another smart thing that you should do as any high school educator is get to know all the collegiate educators near you, particularly at the junior colleges, because my junior college professors and instructors are brilliant. They come and do studio time with my kids because they're building their programs as well. So the kids see that it's not just a high school thing. They can go on to college, they can have a career in the real world. I also bring in and ask as many universities to come and do presentation to my kids. Because the first thing they do is they stick that grad reel up on the screen, and it's all this really cool video game, movies, music videos, drawings from kids their age, and that's completely cool for them. The kids love that because then you're bringing in music and you're bringing in all kinds of other facets. So I want my kids to be confident. And the only way to get confident is to do something repeatedly and to feel at ease. So as often as I can bring other adults in the room and my kids are able to have conversations with them, or I can bring them to a museum or whatever, and they feel like that they can maneuver through that, then I love that.
The mission accomplished.
That makes me feel
What,
really good.
what recommendation would you give to new educators or old educators looking to integrate art education within their lesson planning?
Okay, that's a great question. Art's a great tool, like we already spoke about. Any time that you get a kid to work with their hands, they remember it. They remember it far longer. Like if we talked about the memories that we had as little kids, that ashtray that you made your daddy, when you're in the second grade, you remember that.
Yeah.
That's the same. Even when you get old, you remember stuff like that. So anytime I did I'm crazy about PD. If you, as an educator, I want to learn something new every day. So I went to a professional development Saturday, and then last Saturday I also did. At Region 4, they had this crazy woman who I learned this through my colleague with the anatomy instructor. This woman teaches anatomy through clay. Nice. And you actually make, you have a sheet, and then you actually make everything, the bones, the vessels, the organs. And wow. It was such a brilliant idea.
That's awesome.
So exactly that. If you can get your kids, you talk to them, you can have them look at diagrams of artwork or things that are already drawn. That's an important key. But the very best tool that you have in your toolbox is to have those kids do it themselves or make it themselves. Draw it themselves or actually create a three-dimensional whatever it is. And that's great. And then another thing I would tell new teachers is teaching is hard. It's hard because you have to have patience. So the thing you always have to remember is it's never about you. The anger, the comments, the hostility, the misbehavior, it has nothing to do with you whatsoever. Just champion that kid, find out what's going on, make sure that you have a real firm hand with what's happening in your room, and bring in art. Do as much art as you can possibly do, and it will it'll change the way your classroom runs. Also, to have kids do work collaboratively and show them what to do and then have them do it. That's the best. That way, they're creating at a higher level. They're helping each other prepare, then they're presenting it, they're becoming the experts.
Correct.
Yeah.
Now, what about for the administrators who are looking at us right now? What recommendation would you give them to revitalize their art programs, and if they're staying, or to make them better in general?
Okay, so if I could retire and do that, I would do that every day. I think the biggest problem that art teachers have as a whole is they have too many kids. Their rooms are too small, they don't have any budget, and they have too many kids because the other art programs, you need to be out of yourself. You have to sing, you have to play, you have to perform. But with art, you can sit and you don't have to do that. So most kids feel most comfortable in art. So you're going to have 35 kids in a little teeny classroom, and that's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. So I would hope that administrators are looking at music appreciation and expanding that music program and the choir programs throughout the day to alleviate overcrowding. So that would be helpful. Also to increase the room size, and I know that that's ridiculous, but it's important that studios have ample. The physical space is important, just like in any creative space. Storing and managing 25 to 35 kids' art projects is insane. And then times 200 kids, 150 kids. Where do you put all that stuff? Okay. So space. And to hire really good teachers. To hire really good teachers.
To make that happen. Well, Joan, I want to thank you one more time for being with us today.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Folks out there, remember that we have this interview and many others in Antonio Corrales YouTube channel. Let's talk about education with Antonio Corrales. Please help somebody today, and see you next time.
Bye.